So academic peer review has been around, I believe, since the mid-1600s. And while that process hasn't necessarily changed a tremendous amount, it is still one of the most trusted forms of scientific review that is available today. There's multiple different types of peer review process, but in its basic form, the author submits a paper for review by like-minded physicians or specialists within that particular area, and through that submission process collects reviewers' notes and commentary on the submission itself. The author then returns back to the drawing board to make those edits to their paper. As you can imagine, this peer review process helps us weed out some of the more weak or unethically sound research that may have been submitted to the journal itself. This is truly a quality control type process that allows us to continue to publish credible information on an ongoing basis.
So each medical profession, and so in my case, pain medicine or physical medicine rehabilitation, has specific societies which are larger and have a bigger following, and these different societies actually usually put out their own journal. There are specific journals that the societies recognize and are read more. And so these are typically the journals that I will follow more closely. I think as a reader and subscriber to these articles, I trust that the information that is portrayed in these articles undergoes stringent peer review. And I think physicians do know that. The journals that do have a higher impact factor are more difficult to publish in and do have more stringent publication guidelines. And for that reason, they are more credible.
The peer review process brings a lot of value. So in biomedicine, most commonly, an editor would want to have at least 2 or 3 peer reviewers for each manuscript. You also want to make sure that that person is an expert in that subdomain. They also have to make sure that the peer reviewer does not have a conflict of interest, they're unbiased in their response, and their responses add value to the author. So this differs considerably from what a less credible or a so-called predatory publisher might do, in that predatory journals and publishers either do not perform any peer review, they simply request your manuscript and then post it online in a PDF, and that's all they do. And they will say they performed peer review, but they did not. And in some cases, they perform an extremely light version of peer review, where there's no real feedback that's being given back to the author, and all manuscripts are accepted pretty much as they're submitted.
I value the content from journals, whether it be in print or online, much more so than I do other media formats. When you look at these other types of media forms, oftentimes they're taking the information that is in these journals, and someone is then synthesizing this and presenting the data to you. Now, when you do that, people can pick and choose different portions or facts to present to you. And the conclusion that they may draw may be one that's falsely represented. And it may not be intentional, but if you kind of pick and choose the various facts which you're going to present, you may or may not come to the same conclusion that the journal article did. And I think that's really important, that you have the whole picture, especially when you're treating patients, that you have the entire global picture before you go ahead and make a recommendation with regards to someone's health.
The most important aspect for us to consider when choosing an advertising partner is definitely credibility. We want to make sure that our physicians find the source that we're advertising on extremely credible. The more that physicians find those sources credible, we know we're going to get repeat users. We know we're going to get repeat visits. We know we're going to get repeat engagements. As they find that source credible, they're going to then find our ads that we're placing next to those sources also credible. And then the physicians, as they are reading the various assets, we trust that they're going to want to engage with our brands or our assets a lot more once they find that they're coming to a very credible source.
When reading a publication that I trust, I am much more likely to pay attention to the advertisements inside the journal. Likely these products, whether it be a medication or a device, is relevant to my field and to my patients. So I always want to make sure that I'm staying on top of everything, being cutting edge. Is there something better or more effective that I could be offering my patients? So I use it as a nidus to then go ahead and research further on either the product, whether it be a device or a medication, to make sure that I am up to date and can offer my patients the best medical care.
Enabling us to find credible publishers, credible partners that we can work with definitely helps us boost our brands and thus transfer that brand equity from the publisher then to the brands that we're working on behalf of.
The process that societies put in place to review advertisements have a lot of value for readers. And so we actually saw this was backed up by a survey that we recently conducted for a journal where we asked readers, does the fact that the society has this lengthy process in place make a difference to you in terms of how you see the credibility of the claims of the advertisements as well as the advertisements themselves? And 72% of those respondents, of the about 180 people we asked, said yes, it does. And so we see in this example a halo effect of being associated with the society and its review process.